Oh no, we are. I thought we were a little bit early, but we're not. We're a bit. Hey, hello everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Hey, welcome to the mess. We're in our weekly roundup of nonsense in the fight against gender ideology, which had a very exciting couple of days with the Maya Forstater trial, where it was really nice to hear some of the arguments from our side, and extraordinary to hear some of the arguments from their side, which included the idea that a belief in biological sex is somehow akin to Holocaust denial.
The world we're living in. Oh my goodness.
And an existential threat. An existential threat to existence. I thought that was quite the thing.
Yeah. Apparently, now I don't know if this is true or not, but it might have been someone just having a laugh. But I believe there was one point when a lawyer for Maya might have said something like, no one is compelled to make you feel nice by using your pronouns, as if reality is a herbal scented bath or something. And apparently there was a Buttergasp from the assembled lunatics, which included Pink News's attack Doberman Vic Parsons, who was in the audience as well. And it's like I love the way they're trying to create a reality amongst themselves by gasping at stuff like that, as if anyone outside of those people believes this, it really, but maybe it's not true. Maybe I'm smearing them.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's so cult-like. I mean, just the idea that biological sex can't possibly be real, and then this hyperbolic. There's something about like when you have some doubt about something, you have to profess to believe it even more fervently. Like the true believers are the ones who secretly hold a little bit of doubt. There's that going on with this a bit. These maniacs. It's kind of amazing how it's really gone from like, this seems a bit like a cult to like, oh my God, this is even worse than Scientology.
Yeah. I like the fact that Americans are waking up to it now. I saw a brilliant piece by that Stella O'Malley tweeted about by a parent talking about their experiences with their trans child. Just an unhappy kid who'd watched too much porn. But they actually in this blog post, they actually said, I believe this is something like a mass lie, and it really is the only way to describe it. It's like a huge piece of hypnotism or something. Helen, yes?
It did, well, hypnotism and hyperbole. I was looking at people when they thought that there might be a judgment today.
Yes.
Catherine Bristow, who I think is head of the Green Party Women's Committee.
Yes, she's chair.
Chair. How is it so bad in the UK? Oh no, that was it. I have no idea how this case is going to go, but I better plan which country I'm going to claim asylum in if she does win.
Asylum.
And isn't that just the most unpleasant thing to say? It so completely dismisses the reality of those people who do actually have to claim asylum and what they're having to flee from in order to do so, or in order to have to do so. It's horrible. It's horribly unpleasant, hyperbolic, and absurd.
That's a new low.
Well, she could try Iran. That's a place that would suit her perfectly.
There you go. You wanna
they hang gay people and encourage gay people to transition. So it's perfect country for her. Although I wouldn't normally say this, but poor Iran. But if she does,
I see somebody in the comments saying that someone had suggested Transylvania. Sorry, that is quite amusing.
But you better be careful when you say hyperbolic, because all of our dear friend, Mr. Meno, got a 7-day suspension for getting into an argument with someone and saying their arguments were hyperbolic.
What? That was the ban? The ban was based on that?
That's right. Yeah. Now he's all in. He's just saying hyperbolic in repeat. Like he's the ACLU.
Yeah. Did you I know some people are, well, my instinctive reaction to Maya not immediately getting her result was despair, because I thought, oh my God, what could they have to think about? But having said that, it possibly might have led to a lot of caterwauling if they had decided too quickly. They didn't even think about it and stuff like that. But there really isn't anything to think about. The case from the other side this morning, like, it was like a collection of the dumbest things that people repeat to each other on Twitter.
Yes, it was like Twitter mantras. They did say about the de Beauvoir
quote. Yeah.
How can this be an argument in a court of law? Yeah. A quote from somebody's book that people haven't read and they've only ever heard the quote.
I think it'll only work if the judge is under 30.
But it's amazing how, like, men, if you get in the way of a man getting off, he will stop at nothing. It's literally, he's going to have to flee to another country and claim asylum, like his life will be destroyed. This is just, all of this is really, these are men who can't get off unless they pretend they're women. I know that's harsh, but that's quite true a lot of the time. And they're just, they treat it like it's life and death,
Yeah.
Don't get in between a man and his ability to achieve orgasm, or he will just bring down hellfire on you.
I must say, I in my younger days, I might have agreed that I should leave. I would leave the country if that ability was curtailed in any way. I don't know what.
What has happened? You just got old.
Yeah, I just got old. I just entered into that country where it doesn't really come up.
Crazy.
So I mean, I've high hopes because the brilliant thing about the Maya's case, it is as always, it's based on the law as it stands, as it exists at the moment. It's not based on wishful thinking. It's not based on the Yogyakarta principles, however you pronounce that. It's based on the law, and as long as the judge sticks to the law, we'll be fine.
Law versus extraordinary emotional arguments. It's really, it's all emotional, isn't it? That
yes.
Existential threat to lives, to upsetting, threatening, unsafe. And it's just the same words over and over again, the same words that we've completely come to expect.
Yes, and all these words they've worked so far because they've been used just against people online. I mean, I remember in the early days when I was first kind of absorbing all these arguments, when I was interested in the subject, but I hadn't really dived in. I was talking to someone about this recently, actually, and I was slightly convinced by this idea that there was a group of people called trans people. They'd always existed, and they were just now becoming brave enough to speak out. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, that makes sense. That explains why so many people are adopting a trans label. That makes sense. But then, you think about it a bit longer and you think, wait a second, wait, what? Like throughout history, and they never once, because they were so frightened that they just never once even suggested there might be a reality like this. Bullshit, Oh
no, they've waited. They've waited for women to do all the fights. I mean, there weren't any trans women saying, actually, I don't want to vote.
That's really funny.
Yes, they've waited until we've made all the gains, and they're like, now we can come out.
Yeah.
This whole idea that there's like a people, the trans people, that's the hardest thing to unpack when you're sort of trying to engage with somebody who's new with this, because they just constantly refer to trans people and trans kids.
Yes.
And it's like you have to stop right there and say, no, we have to go even back to this like conceptual land where we have to talk about that there isn't a trans people, that it's just this arbitrary label that anyone slaps on themselves. People wear women's clothes for all kinds of different reasons, and people will change their identities for all kinds of different reasons. And you're encouraging more and more people to do so and sucking them all into this. That doesn't mean there's some kind of unified people that has some gene. There's no trans gene any more than there's.
You've said it very well in the past that it isn't, trans isn't something that you are. It's an action that you take.
Yes.
In as a result of many, many, many reasons. You know, there's loads of reasons that people decide to become trans.
Sorry, yeah.
No, carry on.
And there's nothing, and a lot of the groups have nothing in common with each other. You know, a young girl trying to escape, an incredibly sexist world by pretending she's a man has nothing to do with a middle-aged guy who decides to become his own mistress. You know, this is a very good point here, I think. Oh no, that's not it. Sorry, this one here. Why didn't they make their move then?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, my God, like, yeah. But in the 80s, it was amazing because it was the exact opposite. I'm trying to find that Phil Donahue clip where Boy George is on the Phil Donahue American talk show. And somebody's like, why aren't you a woman? You're wearing makeup and women's clothes. And he's like, he puts up this huge defense. Of course I'm a man. Just because I wear all these clothes, it doesn't make me any less a man. And it's like the exact opposite. Everybody's arguing the exact opposite now.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, and they're arguing the exact opposite. When arguing the exact opposite will just bring you into conflict with a huge amount of people. You know, like trans men who think they're gay men, and try and go to gay orgies and are rejected and don't understand why. You know, all you have to do to be happy within yourself is tell the truth. Look at Debbie Hayton. You know, look at our trans men friends, Aaron, who's on the show, and Scott Nugent. You know, they tell the truth, and they are trans, and they have dysphoria, and they've cured it for themselves by transitioning, but they're utterly clear-sighted about reality.
And okay, they still exist.
And they still exist,
and they're happy.
Yeah.
And Aaron, I just want to plug his Substack. He has a really great Substack he just created. I don't remember the title of it, but Aaron, Terrell, look that thing up. The guy's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, so it's sometimes when I think of people like Aaron and Scott, I do, I always kind of wonder whether they would disagree with anything I do or anything I say or the way I say it. I would hope they wouldn't. Sometimes I say things to just kind of wake people up out of what I see as a kind of trance everybody's in,
People are allowed to disagree with some of the things you say, but yet overall, the point is that you're on the side of, you want women to have their safe spaces, and you want people just to be able to live their lives as best they can. And, when there's a conflict, let's try and sort it out properly. That's it. And some, tactics and et cetera, within that are going to vary between person to person. But
and things are going to get bumpy sometimes. There's a lot, I say jarring things too. I just said some jarring things about AGPs just like 2 minutes ago. And I have AGP friends who might not be comfortable with that, but I'm trying to jar people, But I went on, I went Mars, another trans man. Mars and Aaron and I had to chat for Mars's channel. And that was my concern too. I was like, okay, I've been talking so much to this audience of non-trans people about the issues with gender identity ideology. Now I'm in a room with two trans men. The first thing I said is like, okay, I probably said a lot of things that may have bothered you. Let me know,
And had you? I'd be curious.
They didn't say so. No, I'm sure I have. But, there was a lot of very open talk. I really appreciate these trans people who understand that this is difficult terrain, and, toes are going to get stepped on anywhere you go, Yeah.
I think one of the more important things is to remind people that, as I said in my interview with Sasha White, I don't observe your taboos. Your taboos are not. I will not observe them. I see them as being based on, and I'm not talking about Mars because and Aaron, because they don't follow these taboos either. But for instance, I will put photographs of people up who I believe are taking the piss,
I think we may have heard about that.
No, tell me more.
But these weird Americans who are so steeped in gender identity have managed to either convince themselves or be tricked by others into thinking that there's something so evil about this that you can't even begin to think about doing. It's amazing. It really is worse than the kind of blasphemy. I remember when I was a kid in Ireland, Hail Mary by Goddard came out. And someone who went to the premiere was punched by a nun on the way out. just for going to see the film. And that's what it's like.
Wow, nuns in Ireland are badass.
But the level of blasphemy was very low. You just had to go to see a film, and it's the same now. The level of blasphemy, like the Buttergasp, is where you can know you've crossed that level when you hear the Buttergasp in your mind. He said he wouldn't use someone's preferred pronouns. It's just no. We don't agree with your taboos. No. They're too harmful. They're too harmful.
To be fair, I think I did something like a Buttergasp when I saw Sam Smith's new tattoo. I do have to say, I did go, really?
I don't want to, sorry, I'm talking a lot today, but let me just, Arthur and I, right, we once saw a thing. We lived together for 4 years while we were writing Father Ted. And one night we saw a documentary, like a little news story about a guy who would go out to his shed and he was trying to count up to 1 billion. And he had one of those little roller things, right? And he was just going +1, +1, and it was going +1, and he was just collecting all the pieces of paper and putting them in piles, right? And Arthur and I laughed so much about it as it was happening. We couldn't breathe. It was so awful. It was like a Greek punishment, and it was just the funniest thing. The funniest thing. And I said to Arthur, I started to open my mouth afterwards, and he said, "Don't say anything." He said, "Don't say anything, you'll ruin it. Let's just go to bed." We went to bed, just still laughing, right? That's how funny Sam Smith's tattoo was to me. For a while, when I first saw it, I just couldn't believe it. And I thought, it's a prank. And I immediately stopped finding it funny because I thought someone was playing a trick on me. But then it was real, and it became hilarious again. And it just stayed hilarious. I posted about it 3 times on my Substack. It's the funniest thing that's ever happened. And the idea that we can't make fun of these people. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? We can't make fun of
actual literal Derek Zoolander come to life. I cannot believe it.
Oh, it was just brilliant.
It's from the whole concept of it. I mean, it so screams narcissism. It's got a mirror. Have they not read about? I mean, have they not read the Greek mythology? It's a mirror.
Narcissism.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'd love if it was even more, just a little bit more complicated. It would have been even funnier. It would be great if there was an older Sam Smith also behind the child in the mirror, and so there were 4 people reflected at each other. That would have been even funnier. But also,
oh no!
That's what happened to him.
He's exploded with laughter. He literally exploded from laughter. There's just like bits everywhere.
Another comedy dimension because it was so funny. Okay, someone wrote a poem for me. Look at me, non-binary Sam. I'm sparkly special, I am, yes I am. Endless selfies of fulsome tits, but still ignored at this year's Brits. My album bombed, what shall I do? Oh yes, I know, a nonce tattoo. I always think, like I said on my Substack, he is both the evidence for he's like it's child pornography, and he's both the evidence and the child pornography and the person committing it. So he could be arrested and his body could be used as evidence. It's like I don't know. There's so many aspects to it. It's almost like the sun. It's like a comedy sun. You can't look at it directly. You have to just kind of get a glimpse of it and turn away because it's so funny that you just might go blind if you look at it too long.
And the giant shoes. The whole thing is. I never thought of the dance angle. Oh gosh, that's weird.
It really is. Like, it's not a good thing.
I mean, and it's the pretended vulnerabilities. I mean, it's the 2 big high heels. I mean, it is a child. It's the turned in feet, as if, you know, it is really quite, it's disturbing, and it's funny, and it so screams the whole movement, just in 1 to 2. That should be the symbol.
Yes.
That is it. That should be on the flag.
Man who's like an inner child who just can't figure out this gender stuff. It's just the most confusing thing in the world. Like, oh my God, I'm wearing heels, but I'm a boy. Nobody can figure this out.
Exactly.
This is the craziest thing. This is like the world's biggest paradox. Obviously, biological sex doesn't exist. Women are evil. You know,
yeah.
This all just follows from looking in a mirror wearing high heels. It's just the worst. Like, it's just like, get over yourselves, people. This is also fucking middle class too.
Absolutely, well, I know.
You know?
Right?
Listen, listen. Now we're in danger. We're in danger of not making the joint classy before the LGB Alliance arrive. Kate and Bev are hanging on. Kate and Bev, can I just check? I know you can hear me, but you can, but I can't hear you yet. Will you just make sure you've turned off YouTube if you are watching it on YouTube, because then it won't echo. So the LGB Alliance. This is a very bad point to bring them in. I'm so sorry. This is so. We should have tried to segue, but it is
something serious.
All right, I'll say something serious. It is Lesbian Visibility Week, and we thought to celebrate, we'd get the LGB Alliance on, our two favorite lesbians, vilified as a hate group by all and sundry in the most extraordinarily absurd way. So let's get them on and catch up with them and see how they're doing. So yes, hello to Kate, looking very moody, and Bev. Hello, Bev. How are you doing? Hi, Kate.
Hi, lovely to not all and sundry, Graham. Not all and sundry. You know.
Oh my God. Okay, I gotta ask. Well, no, I won't ask you about Sam Smith's tattoo, because there's no way you can talk about that and come out of it. No one comes out of it well. But you did have some great news recently where the LGB Alliance were accepted as the Charity Commission investigated and named you a legitimate charity and so on. Can you explain to us exactly what does that mean? What does it mean that the Charity Commission investigated you, and what did they find, and why is that significant?
Well, we're very pleased, obviously, that the Charity Commission gave us charitable status, and it took a while because they did have to investigate quite a lot of strange, bogus claims, and we're very glad that they did that, because it's very useful for us that they've investigated them and found that there isn't any reason to deny us charitable status, and so here we are, and this is the next phase of it's the beginning of the beginning. No, what did we say, Kate? It was the next phase of the beginning.
It is. It's the start of the beginning. We describe October 29 to 2019 until April 2021 as the prologue. Mm-hmm. And we're feeling the love. You mentioned that a lot of nut jobs have called us extraordinary names.
Yes.
I probably shouldn't say nut jobs now. We're a charity.
Well, Kate, you're the one who gets in trouble.
No, you mustn't say hyperbole. You mustn't say hyperbole. You know,
okay. There's been an awful lot of disinformation from people who should know better. So the reason this is important is it just legitimizes us as an organization from the beginning. Yeah. We've said that we're here to talk. We're here to defend freedom of speech. We'll never allow ad hominem attacks. We're not interested in being unpleasant to anybody. We're interested in positively promoting LGB people and making the United Kingdom a better place for everybody. And of course, as we've always said, our ultimate goal is global revolution, because this is a global issue. And the fact that the UK LGBT Alliance is now a charity sends a message to other countries. We're serious, we're here to stay. And, we will continue to do what we do, which is to lobby politicians, talk to the United Nations, talk to EHRC. We're a serious body and we ain't going nowhere.
Yeah. Well, brilliant. I'm just delighted for you, and it's been a long old road. And you started talking about this about 4 years ago. Was it 3 or 4 years ago? And from kind of coming up with the idea to this moment?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when Kate and Johnny Best, of course, put their petition out, was it 3 or 4 years ago? It was, the initial hope, wasn't it, that we would all be able to work together and that we'd be able to change things. So that was the idea.
Yes. Yeah. The original petition was. I've often said this. I think we were a bit too risk-taking and radical. We asked Stonewall to talk to us.
Your tone is terrible. My goodness.
I know. It was a bad strategic error, and we continued to make that error for 2.5 years.
Yeah,
we genuinely felt that, and we still do. You know, there's only one way forward, and that's dialogue.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's wonderful watching all of this. You know, you describe this whole first, whatever it is, 1.5 years and change as a prologue. But what a prologue. Oh my God. If it's a prologue, it's like the first installment of a tetralogy, you know, the Lord of the Rings of LGBT, you know.
Well, I mean, the thing is that we've disrupted the narrative, and it really is annoying to quite a lot of people, because they want to pretend that there is some sort of community of LGBTQ plus IA, I don't know, and then that we're all one big happy family, and nothing could be further from the truth. Unfortunately, it really isn't a community, and there are lots of disagreements, and there's nothing wrong with having disagreements, but if you pretend the disagreements don't exist, then you can't start to solve them, and that's the problem, really.
And if you pretend that the people who disagree with you are evil, then that's also something that, like, you know, people talk about me becoming radicalized and stuff like this, but my attitude from the start was, I'm not going to sit down and let people call me a bigot when I'm not. I'm not going to accept that, you know. In fact, that leads me on to another question. What was the reaction when the Charity Commission gave their result from the LGB Alliance's opponents? How did that go down?
You mean, how did our opponents react, you mean?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
I do feel a little bit sorry for the Charity Commission, who apparently normally get 1 or 2 responses to their announcements, and in this particular case they got 2,000. So that must have been a little bit difficult for them, and but I'm sure they're prepared for it. They knew that this would be controversial. It shouldn't be controversial, of course. There's nothing controversial about lesbians, gays and bisexuals having a voice of their own, and especially since the other groups have now focused on something else that we don't subscribe to.
Yeah, we were thoroughly pleased by the fact that the Charity Commission put out what turned out to be a 13-page statement, so that if anyone was really, really seriously concerned, all they had to do was read it. Yeah, it was a legal document. It was citing lots of legal precedents. It examined all the charges that had been laid before us, including some highly defamatory ones that became part of a petition that is still doing the rounds. Do not let LGB Alliance be a charity because lie 1, lie 2, lie 3, lie 4.
But there is, of course, the very shocking thing that we subscribe to a really quite terrible belief, that there is such a thing as an adult human female. And if you believe this disgusting thing, apparently you are denying the existence of trans people. So this is in itself an offensive thing to believe, and that was part of the petition against us. So our only defense is, we do believe that, and that we don't think that's offensive.
Yeah, it's extraordinary how they shoot themselves in the foot, don't they? They're writing this petition to shut down the LGB Alliance's charitable status application, and the first thing they say is, well, first of all, they believe that adult human female is a real thing. Can you believe it? It's like, I think we can.
Yeah, and I think it was disappointing to see other charities calling the integrity of the Charity Commission into saying that this would call their reputation into disrepute, which I think is an extraordinary thing to say to the regulatory body of a charity.
It is.
Did Stonewall do that?
Yeah.
Did they? Well, that's interesting, because this week, Tish, who might be in the comments, and it's brilliant, Tish discovered that the Arcus Foundation has allocated $9 million to exclusively transgender causes. Stonewall has accepted funding from a body that has also given millions to evangelical Christian organizations. So it's quite rich. It's quite, excuse my language, it's quite fucking rich that Stonewall are accusing you of working with right-wing groups when they have been financed by a group that also funded them.
We don't work with those groups, and we don't have any financing from them, sir.
I know you don't. In fact, don't you have a thing in your
mandate?
Mandate that says you can't work with those groups.
Yes, it is something that we decided quite early on, that it was really quite important for us never to be associated with any group that was homophobic or that did not subscribe to women's reproductive rights. And we wrote that into to our code of conduct, and we find it quite important.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the many things that people get wrong about us, for example, Graham, you can't stand being called a bigot.
Yeah, for some reason I don't like it.
Well, we don't care, and we don't respond, because if we did, we'd never do anything else. So that the way that we've been working since, more or less since the 23rd of October, the day after our meeting when Alison launched us, Alison Bailey, we've decided that we don't sue anyone for defamation. We don't engage with them when they call us all sorts of ludicrous things, from being anti-Semitic to Ku Klux Klan supporters to neo-Nazi supporters, etc., etc. We don't respond because we've got a huge job on our hands. And the job on our hands, as I mentioned, is global revolution. So let the people who say silly things are not the important people. The important people are the ones that we're talking to. And I say that with deep humility. In order to change the world, we need to engage with the grown-ups. So we're not going to get shouty about people calling us silly names. We don't engage with juvenile online publications. We just don't do it. We focus on writing papers, writing letters, and you can see there's a pattern emerging that gives credence to the fact that hard work by unfunded grassroots organizations is paying off, and we are winning the battle.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of some really interesting things this week. I mean, you were discussing the Forstater case earlier, and of course the EHRC with this important intervention is definite. It shows a real change because the EHRC has been misrepresenting the law in the past and is now coming forward and stating the law quite clearly. We've also seen the Endocrine Society, which has in the past made some rather odd statements, coming out with a very strong statement about biological sex, I think yesterday or the day before.
That's
so
right.
these are rather important changes, and there are a lot of legal cases, of course, coming on and Senate's case.
Yeah, let me just run through those. So 20th of April 2021, we get charitable status. 27th, 28th, my Forstater Appeal. Yesterday and today has been mind-blowing. Next week, 6th of May, Election Day, Anne Sinnott has her permission hearing where she's challenging the EHRC about giving illegal guidance for 10 years. Wow. And Anne is one of our directors. She's one of our founders, been with us from the beginning. This is a groundbreaking case, and I'm sure the work that she's done was helpful in encouraging, shall we say, EHRC to make the statement they did yesterday, which was that
many people have worked towards this. Actually, I mean, we could sit here and name 20, 30 people. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to just mention Tish, who also pointed out that I think the British Psychological Society, is that it, are currently hosting
under investigation,
which is because of Tish again. So she's just been doing amazing work recently.
Fantastic research.
Can I just push back a little bit on one point? Okay.
Okay, go on then.
All right. Okay.
If you have to.
Yeah, well, we didn't. This is not going to be. It's a hostile interview, by the
way. Is this a safe space, Graham?
The thing is, I think you should make an example of one person because, and let me just quickly explain why. I saw John Nicholson writing to an NHS doctor who was praising the LGB Alliance, and he said something along the lines of, it's quite disturbing. It's quite disturbing that, let me explain to the audience, it's quite disturbing that you're praising the LGB Alliance. Where do you work, or something like that? People like John Nicholson, they are the ones who are targeting ordinary people and reporting them to their employers and cancelling them and all that sort of thing. And I just think that if you make an example of one of these high profile people like John Nicholson, you might cure all the Aidan Comerfords and all the the Scottish the man at bus stops, as we call it, the Scottish actor. I just feel that getting one of them into a courtroom will do the job that you're talking about, which is it'll bring some adults into the room, and it will expose them for, because we know they're just lying. They're just consistently lying.
Let me strongly disagree with you.
Okay. This is getting bad. I might leave again.
It's an ambush.
We're ambushing each other.
Our answer to that is our answer from probably 12 months ago, where we invited him to speak. Come and have a cup of tea with us. It's the same today. I've forgotten who's one of the very clever people on Twitter did a breakdown of every single attack that was made on us by John Nicholson. Now, we're enormously grateful to that person, because he exposed a tissue of lies. But, my reaction is, I don't want to see him in court. I want to see him over a cup of tea, have a chat, explain where we stand, find out exactly why he tells lies about us. What is his real issue? So I'm not as pugnacious as you, Graham, and Bev isn't either. We're just two silly old lesbians who wish to play nicely in the playground.
Dipshit 1 and dipshit 2, as they call us.
No, but seriously, why would we waste energy on a court case for that? We're building a global network.
That's the point, Graham. Every ounce of energy we spend doing something like that, we can't spend doing the important work that we want. We're only a small organization, and you have to choose what you're doing. Do you spend it on negative energy of fighting somebody who for some reason, has an animus against us, and that's unfortunate? Or do you spend it building things up and forging connections, explaining the truth to people, and building a world revolution? That's our choice, and that's been our choice from the beginning.
I think it works, because you've got some organizations that won't, and then you've got, you need different sorts of people and different sorts of groups in a movement, and as a whole it all works together, I think, quite well. There are some court cases which are making a difference. There is a lot of grassroots work. And then there's us just having a bit of a laugh and a moan.
Well, let me just continue that a bit, because we're talking about this pattern emerging, and I do think the tectonic plates are moving. So we've got Kira Bell, 23rd, 24th of June. That case has echoed around the world, whether the US press likes it or not. Mm-hmm. It is gradually getting through, and that will be a hugely important. That's end of June. And then the Alison Bailey full merits hearing has been extended from 8 days to 20 days. Wow. 20 days to go through all the disclosures that have come from Garden Court Chambers and from Stonewall. Now that again is going to have repercussions globally. So when these really important cases are going through, we'll be supporting, watching, listening, and then of course we've got the Cass inquiry. But for us to focus energy on a person who's obviously got some very I don't know how to describe, but strange ideas. But in contrast to us spending money and asking our supporters to pay money for a court case such as the one you suggest, Graham. Let me tell you.
I forgot about the money.
Well, but also let me tell you what happens every day. There are two things I want to tell you about. One is that a lot of trolls say, what have you ever done for LGB? So we always laugh and say, what did the Romans ever do for us? But then the answer is, we formed a charity. So that answers that question, because we've had to go through every hoop and jump every jump you could imagine to build up our reliability and to deserve charitable status, which we've done. So that's number one. We are now the LGB charity in the United Kingdom, full stop. Isn't there?
And I just want to say that we do a lot of other things behind the scenes as well. That we get messages of support all the time, but we also get a lot of requests for help. People who say who say my daughter is suddenly thinks she's a boy. Can you help? And we can put people in touch with each other. So constantly we're answering actually personal requests. I'm in trouble at my work. They want me to tell them my pronouns, and I don't know what to say. So we have requests like this several every day. And of course, we have our international work, because right from the very beginning, from the very first day we set up, we had requests from other countries when are you setting up in Canada? When are you setting up in Australia? And of course, we didn't set up anywhere else, in spite of this wonderful joke that goes around that it's just me with my laptop everywhere, and somehow I've created all these other
changing IP addresses.
But that Bev, can I just pick up on that, because that was the point. The second point I was going to make is that our urgent job, we've got we always have a mountain of work, as you can imagine, but the big LGB mountain for us is, how can we provide support for kids like us who are coming out now, and the ones who are writing to us, their mothers and fathers are writing to us and saying, help, I don't want them to go to the LGBT group, because there's so many boys there who say they're non-binary or they're trans. Where can they go? Now,
a girl comes home at 12 years old and says to her mum, I think I'm a lesbian. Does that mean I'm trans? I mean, this is the kind of thing that we're responding to.
So we're going to have to develop a business plan quite quickly, which is obviously in development. But part of that will be fundraising for specific things, such as a helpline, because every single helpline for kids, including Childline, will has drunk the Kool-Aid, unfortunately.
That's right.
And confuses gender dysphoria with being trans, or being a lesbian with being non-binary. We, as an LGB charity, it's our duty to hurry up. I mean, as quickly as we can, because it is difficult. But these are the goals that we have, to actively support children and young people.
And of course, to set up a service like that, we'll need to have properly qualified therapists who are able to run that and give the kind of help with proper safeguarding and so on that you need for a service like that. So that's going to take quite a while to plan and to get the proper people in place and so on, and the funding.
And we should say that Lesbian Rights Alliance are ahead of us in trying to provide a lesbian space for young people in London in the next few months. So, but, so things are changing, and you may now speak, Graham.
Thank you. Well, I take it back then. I think you're right. I think you've got a much more important job to do. But let me also give you a little bit more good news. Two things happened recently that I think are a sign of the tectonic plates shifting, as you said. The first is that a lot of gay men have started coming out in support of you and against gender ideology. That not only that, they're putting their faces in their biogs. They're being more and more people are standing behind their views. It's really getting exciting in that sense. The second thing that happened is Pride in London recently. They just got apparently ratioed to people not on Twitter, means that they had a lot of people in the comments disagreeing with them, like Bev and Kate just disagreed with me, and they got this pushback because they slandered Boys Magazine, called it anti-trans and stuff like this, and a lot of gay men replied to the Pride in London message standing up for lesbians, and it was just one of those things that makes me so proud to be on this side of the fight, because we always knew that there was a lot of misogyny that sometimes the gay movement have had a bit of a problem with. But I'm an optimist by nature, and and I always thought that people's goodness would finally kind of show itself, and I think it's beginning to, and I think that you, by being the adults in the room, and by being so dignified in the face of the most appalling slander, have really helped bring that about. So well done, you. What are the immediate next steps for LGB Alliance? What happens when you become a charity? I might want to become one at some point.
Well, there's various things that we're working on at the moment. One of the things we're working on at the moment is this these plans that some people want to introduce to ban conversion therapy. And obviously that sounds, everybody would want to ban conversion therapy because that's vile. I think that when people think of conversion therapy, they probably think of horrible electric shock treatment administered to try and turn gay people straight. And fortunately, in the UK, we haven't actually seen that since 1970. So it's a bit late in the day to want to ban it. So you think, whoa, something else is going on here. And there is something else going on, because instead of, gay conversion therapy, what they really want to ban is what they call gender identity conversion therapy. And when you look closer at what that means, places where they've introduced it, in Victoria, for instance, in Australia, you see what they call conversion therapy is simply any talk therapy. So if a 14-year-old girl comes in and says, I'm a boy, you're supposed to practice what's called the affirmative model and say, okay, you're a boy, and not find out what her sexual orientation is, whether she's got any other mental health problems, any family issues and so on. You're not supposed to do that. Otherwise, you're practicing conversion therapy. So we're trying to sort that out and explain that. It's a difficult thing to explain to people.
It's very difficult, isn't it? I think there's sorry, I don't want to keep, Artie, you go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, just that. Yeah, it's so hard. That it's such powerful language, conversion therapy. And it goes back to what we were talking about just before you two stepped into the studio, about how it speaks to this idea that trans people is a type of people rather than sort of a label that gathers a whole bunch of disparate groups. It's really, really hard to unpack that. People don't understand that when you get into these arguments, you have to really step back and you get into these conceptual discussions before you can even talk about, what's right and what's wrong with these things. So it's very, very difficult with people. It's
what I find most pernicious about it is that affirmation medicine, affirmative medicine, or whatever you want to call it, or affirmative medical care is gay conversion therapy. That's what it is. It's like sometimes it's not, but very rarely, but really what you're talking about is telling gay men and gay boys and gay girls that they are actually the opposite sex. That is gay conversion therapy, and I think that the fact that it is so hard to talk about this, but because they've grouped these two opposing ideas together, is a feature, not a bug for them. I think they like that. They like that it's confusing.
There's a couple of points to add to that, Graham. First of all, we want everybody listening or watching who hasn't signed the petition to sign it. In fact, we'll make sure that we tweet it after the programme. We need 10,000 signatures on this petition for Parliament to make a formal response. But I think the best way of looking at this is to say, let's look at the timing of this. Why have we suddenly got a campaign against conversion therapy? It's just a few months after the Cura Bell verdict. And all becomes very, very clear. It's part of a continuing battle to pretend that children can be born in the wrong body.
Yes. And
to pretend that a child who is gender non-conforming, such as the vast majority of people who grow up to be gays and lesbians, need to be put on lifelong medication. And I the only way I can describe it is wicked. It's wicked and it's deluded. So we've been writing to every single MP by email and by ordinary mail, explaining the fact that there's a huge difference between conversion therapy as per Alan Turing and LGB people, and what is happening today, the biggest conversion therapy scandal of telling young people who are likely to be LGB that they are trans. And we've had a good response from those letters. And that's what I mean about engaging with the right people on the right subjects.
Is that petition the one by James S's?
Yes.
Great. I've actually interviewed James and Stella O'Malley and James Caspian, which we'll be releasing hopefully today or tomorrow, depending on how fast Artie can take out my fluffs at the start. But it's a great interview, and it really does kind of back up all of that. The one thing that Stella points out is when was the last time there was gay conversion therapy? When has anyone been seeing this? And the fact is that it doesn't exist at the moment, not in any real way. No. So for them to suddenly be fighting about it is as suspicious as hell. Yeah,
it's not gay people asking for this. I think it was James Cantor, my friend, who was talking about the last time in the medical literature there was any reference, if you look through citations, to any kind of gay conversion therapy in psychology and psychiatric treatment of any kind is 25, 30 years ago. The last single reference even to it. It's long, long gone. And there's still some cases of private, religious, sort of coercion, but the irony is a lot of these laws that are being passed around the world still make exemptions for that anyways. So it's like
it's so strange.
Gay people aren't asking for this. There isn't a single gay person who's ever said, conversion therapy is an issue we really should bring to Parliament. Never happened. Yeah.
And basically, what's happening as these therapists, James and the two Jameses and Stella explained, is that essentially what's happening is that they're preventing therapists from exploring a person's background, any comorbidities that might exist. As we all know, sorry, I'm ruining the interview. Sorry, Stella. She's probably watching this going, "What are you doing? You're blowing it." But basically, there's a lot of things that go along with the trans diagnosis often, like autism. There's a lot of autistic girls who are being told they're trans. Depression, abuse, bullying. This is so funny.
These are all the things.
I'm just ruining this interview, Glenn, for later on. Sorry.
No,
anyway,
but one of the things that we have tried to ask for from our politicians.
Move that paper away from the microphone, Kate.
One of the things that we've asked for is that any statement or legislation waits until after the Hilary Cass inquiry is completed.
What's that again?
Hilary Cass, she's been appointed by the NHS to do an 18-month inquiry. The terms of reference are fantastic. They're balanced, they're rational, they're science-led, they're evidence-led, everything that we would hope for an inquiry into what the hell is going on with our treatment of children who present as gender non-conforming.
In particular, at the Tavistock clinic, in other words, which is the clinic that treats young people who present with gender dysphoria, and and there's been so many complaints about this clinic, not least from all the people who've resigned from it, and of course you've seen the Newsnight reports on it, and a lot of these kids come from homophobic backgrounds, and
look at I don't want to get you in trouble, but look at Susie Green. Like Susie Green, the CEO of Mermaids, and I know I say this all the time because it blows my mind. It blows my mind that this is out there and you can see it and no one is taking it in. But Susie Green admits that her husband was uncomfortable with their son playing with girls' toys. And the next thing, there's no other explanation as to what led them to believe he was trans. Suddenly he's in Thailand having an operation. It's the most extraordinary thing. I think people will look back at it. There is evidence that many clinicians at the Tavistock have referenced the atmosphere of homophobia, the culture of homophobia amongst some of the clinicians. Many parents and the children absorb that. But what's so good, I mean, it's so brilliant that the NHS has appointed this woman with a wonderful track record as a paediatrician, and she's got a fantastic team. She's got a website. Everything's going to be transparent. There's going to be a huge research project. And one of the things that I love is that apparently she's said to have said she wants to talk to lots and lots of people.
she wants to talk to trans, to gay, to lesbian. And apparently she said, in particular, I'd like to speak to happy lesbians who thought they were boys.
Right, good.
Yeah. You
Well,
know, because you don't see many happy lesbians. We're usually committing suicide on the television if we appear, or you know, we're completely bonkers, locked up in a sort of farm in God knows where with 17 cats. So you know, we this is our opportunity to shine and break the stereotype and say very loudly in Lesbian Visibility Week, you can be a happy lesbian. But loads of girls don't believe that.
Yeah, I know.
They're growing up. The only way they can be happy is to say, I'm not a lesbian, I'm non-binary.
I spoke to one particularly depressed former clinician at the GIDS who said that you know, being lesbianism is the lowest of the heap. It's just the bottom of the heap. It's the worst thing you can be. We really have to rescue the reputation of lesbians, as Kate said, show how many happy lesbians there are, and that it's a great.
You've certainly done that this afternoon, I think.
Yeah,
rescue the reputation of lesbians. I have to say, any fight that you two are on the side of, I'm absolutely pleased to say that this is obviously the right side.
Yes, delighted to be on it, even though it means that we're not allowed on any social media platforms.
But it's wonderful, YouTube, Evan, Kate. The sort of you're a symbol of sort of the what would you call it? Like sort of the slow and steady kind of pace. Like there's so much intense fighting on social media, but if you just maintain your stride, keep moving forward, sort of tune out all the noise and just keep focused step by step, it really, really starts to work. And then it starts to work first slowly and then very quickly. Like you said, we're still in the prologue phase. And now there are LGB alliances have sprung up on every populated continent except for Africa so far.
And you know what's so wonderful, Archie, is that they're so young. So many, they're these young kids. Some of them are just like 19 years old. Either in Brazil and in India. Really, really young people who are just fired with enthusiasm to revive the LGB movement, and we're just so happy about that.
Yeah,
I mean, we're oldies, but most of them are very young.
It almost feels like there's a population dip. The older people don't buy into this gender identity ideology. And the very, very young who are coming up on the other side of it are also not buying it. It's this in-between group that grew up on Tumblr that seems to be susceptible to it. The very young are looking up at, the ones who are 17, 18, 19, 16, they're already making jokes about it. They're like, this is so stupid. And then the older people who never bought it, some of them tried to because they were trying to, remain hip and relevant. And but you know what I mean? There's just this one. It seems that there's this one demographic that's moving up through the ranks that's causing all the problems.
The 20-something, 30-something.
Yeah, exactly. So that's great. It's really hopeful that the younger generation is just as reasonable about this as the older generation. It seems. Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of saw something was happening when I saw a TikTok of 4 kids who'd filmed themselves doing trans rights. And I thought, wow, because I always thought that, I think, I have a theory that basically I think this is a kind of a hippie thing almost, and the punks are about to come up and explode everything. Maybe it's something.
I was thinking that. I think, the sort of the woke youngsters are actually getting just a little bit too old, and now you've got a group of youngsters coming behind saying, what the hell is this authoritarian movement? We're going to rebel against it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is all great. I mean, every teenage generation has its own form of rebellion, but not with taking hormones and surgery. I mean, there are 40,000 girls and young women on GoFundMe raising money to have
40,000 now.
Breast
40,000.
Yeah, I have to keep checking the number every time I mention this. It's over 40,000 now who want raising money to have their breasts amputated. This is not the usual kind of teenage rebellion. There's something worse than that going on here, which is really why we have to make this known, and we have to get people more educated about it. Because in the United States, people think, oh, there are these poor trans children, and there are these evil people trying to stop them getting the hormones and surgery they need. And this is really upside
let's
down.
Think about. I mean, I just always think of you, Graham, as the hero who was the one to really, really, really try your hardest to point out what was happening to children. And when you started doing it, people called you a nut job.
Yeah,
they didn't believe what you were saying.
Yeah, that was kind of my fault, though. I would often lie to people for fun on Twitter, but I didn't. But when it came to when it came to be taken seriously, I had sort of prepared the ground in a bad way, you know.
No,
well, I wish we'd come back on Twitter because we could do with you.
Oh, we need you on Twitter.
Well, I don't think that's going to happen. But I you know, like I met you around then 4 years ago, and I was, you know, I was happy then to be in the fight, and I still am. And it just looks like, you know, it's going to take a while, but we're eventually going to win it. And let's just hope we can save more girls from doing, you know, going through
doing
this.
lots of things, but also
like what kind of revolution? Excuse me, but what kind of progressive left-wing revolution enriches plastic surgeons and pharmaceutical companies? You know?
Yeah. Well,
and straight men.
And straight men. Yeah, it empowers those three groups.
Yeah.
So it's not a good revolution. It's not. The gender revolution is shit, to be honest. Excuse my language. Sorry. I've really brought it down now. It was going so well.
Well, can I ask a question? I'm interested in sort of long term. You two, your position. You've started a charity. You know, like you said, this is just the prologue. Let's talk about the long-term prospects, because it seems like things are turning around very quickly. Let's imagine an optimistic future where within, say, 3 years from now, Stonewall's reputation is in absolute tatters. They're mired in lawsuits. There's been a complete turnaround. There's total awareness of the phenomenon of autogynephilia. There has been a complete collapse of people being checked into gender clinics. What are we going to do? As you know, what are you going to do as the LGB Alliance? Is there going to be money put into therapy for these people, into detransition? What does the landscape look like in an optimistic 3 years from now?
Well, it's interesting, Artie, because occasionally we look back at our original plans that we sketched out, and they actually haven't changed. We always knew that we had to become a charity. We had to become a limited company. We had to become a charity. We then have to have trustees, and we're in the process of appointing trustees at the moment. We're very glad to have the structure that comes with being a company and a charity. Unlike, again, people who just don't understand us. Oh my God, they're now subject to the Charity Commission. We like that. But our plans have always been that we will remain a grassroots organisation, but we will be applying for funds from major trusts. We want our budget to be in the millions within 24 months. And the reason for wanting a budget in the millions is precisely so that we can have various groups, such as the one we've talked about, to help to offer helplines, help groups, online support to LGB people and their families, which simply doesn't exist now. Access to therapists who are not, who have not swallowed the Kool-Aid. International support section. We need to
fund research, because there's such a need for research in so many areas that are not being properly researched now, and proper polling of public opinion, which is you see polls sometimes which are trotted out with completely self-selecting samples and leading questions. There's proper polls are needed for the public, and education. There are so many things that we need to do that we will need funds for.
And basically, it's all in our articles of association and in our application to the Charity Commission, and the emphasis is on education. So that's why we need research. That's why we need meetings. That's why we need good communications and a massive resource centre. There are so many grassroots groups who have no funding, and we want to be able to support those who share our views. So long term, Artie, we want to be a well-established voice of LGB people that is based in the UK but can help people in other countries, and particularly those countries in the Commonwealth and others where it's still illegal to be LGB. So we're going to foretop to other charities who work globally.
I'm not sure if they immediately understand what you mean.
Foretop is shorthand for reach out.
Okay.
When we feel established enough, we will be working with other charities in countries where it is illegal, because that's, especially Commonwealth countries, it's just extraordinary that this hasn't really been tackled by other funding organizations, because that's a key. We are internationalists, we are LGB, we like to play by the rules, and we like to the other thing that's very central to our purpose is rebuilding lesbian culture and gay and bisexual culture. So there's going to be a big emphasis on arts and music and how we can incorporate that into our charitable function. So when we have, for example, our conference, which we had to postpone, we're hoping to announce the date quite shortly. But anytime we do a conference or a meeting, we will have some music, some art, some poetry, some artistic element, because, you know, the point about being LGB, as far as I remember before all this happened, was that it was really good fun.
It was fun, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, you know, I think I must apologize, because basically what happened is straight people invaded, and straight people just ruined it. And that's what we do, I'm afraid. That's what we do, yeah. So listen, I think we've gone over an hour, which is usually our cutoff. So we should probably wrap it up. Is there anything you'd like us to promote or put in the description of the video later on? Anything? I'll put I've already linked to the petition that you mentioned on Mumsnet, and we'll place it under here as well. Is there anything else that we can direct people to?
Yes.
Go on. All right, nice to talk to you.
No, I'm sorry. The one thing that I would say to people is bear with, because people have extraordinarily high expectations of a band of volunteers who are doing our best, and things take time. So please keep tweeting, retweeting, following our website, following our webinars. And we're moving as fast as we can, but we do ask people to stay calm, stay pleasant to all our opponents, because they're angry, they're upset, they know the tides.
And many of them are well-meaning. Many of our opponents are very well-meaning, and they have heard bad things about us, and they haven't investigated, and they assume things which are not right. And that's why we prefer to talk to people, and that's what we're always going to do.
Good. Well, that sounds like a
and
good
final
plan.
point before we go.
Yes, go on, Kate.
We have to thank every single group who came before us, every single individual, because Bev and I get quite a lot of airtime because we're gobby. But I just want everyone they know who they are. Every single person who's helped us along the way. Some are anonymous, some aren't, but we want to thank you, and please don't think that we ever forget your role in getting us to the end of the prologue and the start of phase 1.
Yeah, we stand on a lot of shoulders.
I think that's a perfect way to end it. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next week, and look out for the thoughtful therapists interview, which is coming later. Kate and Bev, pleasure to speak to you again. Congratulations.
Lovely to see you all. Thank you.
Helen and Artie, lovely to see you too. So see you next week. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Like and subscribe.
Bye.